Welcome to part 3 as we explore Port, an open internal developer portal. If you missed part 1 or part 2, you can find them here and in the description. So far, we've seen how to build our data model with blueprints, how to add data sources, and how to create self-service actions to do pretty much whatever you like through pipelines or webhooks. In this video, we'll take this a step further and show how to integrate Port with ArgoCD. I'm a big fan of GitOps, and ArgoCD is my favorite tool for that. I'll show you how you can enhance the developer's experience where they can interact with ArgoCD directly from within Port. We'll create a dashboard to view our services, to see which apps are unhealthy or out of sync. We can also sync an app through a self-service action in addition to running deployments or rollbacks straight from Port, leveraging Port's robust RBAC mechanism. I'm excited to show you all of this, so let's get started. All right, I want to show you what the developer experience is going to look like. So on the left-hand side, we have an ArgoCD dashboard. There's a bunch of new pages that show up in the catalog here that we'll discuss later. But for now, one dashboard that we have for our developer team, maybe they might have multiple applications that they're responsible for. So you can put all these in one nice dashboard as you see here. On the right-hand side, I have my ArgoCD application here called Nginx. And this really is for us to see what's happening behind the scenes, so the developer doesn't need to see this view at all. I just have it here so we can see what's going on as the application syncs, it's out of sync, and so on. So the focus here is on this dashboard here where we've deployed this for our developers so that they can use it. We have a widget here that talks about unhealthy applications, a widget for applications by sync status. So we have one application that is synced, and any out of sync awesome service workloads here, our application, and we label it awesome service. You can see the filter here, and we're filtering on the sync status that is out of sync. I actually forgot to put the service here for our awesome service. So this is actually how it should be. And then we can save this view. And now we're actually specifically interested in that awesome service, not any service that we might have in the environment. So that way you can tailor this to your team's applications that they're responsible for. And then applications by cluster, we can see the apps by cluster here. And again, I can make this bigger to see better. So there's the application that we're responsible for. And then self-service actions, which we'll see in just a little bit, where we can sync an application, we can run a rollback, and then we have some history for the ArgoCD app syncs that we've run, all the actions that we have here, and also the rollback deployment history as well, all the actions here. All right, so let's run a scenario here and say, hey, if we've run the app and it's running well, but then there was a glitch somewhere, we want to roll back. Okay. So one thing we can do is we can just run this self-service here and select our service as awesome service and select the image that we want to roll back to. We're on 114.2. So if I take a look here, you'll see that my image is Nginx 114.2, and I actually want to roll back to 114.1. Okay, let's execute that. And you can auto merge this as well. So whether to create a PR should be merged or not. So let's not merge it just yet, just to show you that you have the option to not merge it. And here we're going to see a rollback deployment self-service that is going to run. And you can see the progress and the job links, of course, as we saw in the previous video in part 2, how to create self-service actions were tied here into GitHub Actions, and the rollback has succeeded. So we can go back and go into our ArgoCD dashboard, and let's just move this faster. So let's refresh ArgoCD. Actually, this is not synced. I'm sorry, because we haven't merged the PR yet. So let's go back into GitHub. Let's look at pull requests. And yep, there's a pull request here. So at this point, again, you can auto merge or not. In this case, we decided not to auto merge. So let's assume that this is all good. We can, of course, look at our updates here, and we can see that Nginx image is going from .2 to .1. And then we can say, okay, we agree. Let's merge the pull request, confirm the merge. And pull request successfully merged and closed. So at this point, now we can go ahead and refresh. And now we see that we're out of sync. And this takes about a minute or so for our application to show up here out of sync on the dashboard. So we're pulling ArgoCD every minute to see anything that has changed in ArgoCD that will get reflected inside of port. So let's get it a quick refresh. You might have to wait a full minute. We'll see. Oh, no, we didn't have to. So we can see here that the application is out of sync. We can see exactly which application is out of sync here and all the details around it, the GitHub URL. The health status is healthy, but it is out of sync just as it's showing here in ArgoCD. This is our service and ArgoCD namespace, which service it's tied to in our service catalog. The awesome service that we saw, ArgoCD project, Kubernetes resources. It's an Nginx deployment. You can go in here and you can see the actual deployment itself. So it's all tied in very nicely. If we go back to the dashboard. So now we can go ahead and sync this application once again directly from port. So we can click on sync, choose our running service Nginx, hit execute. And once again, this will generate a self-service action called sync application. And we can see the progress of it. We can check the job link here, which will take us to GitHub Actions workflow. And we're seeing that it's syncing the ArgoCD app, and it's already synced here in our ArgoCD dashboard. And if we click here, we can see that we've rolled back to Nginx 114.1 image. So that is perfect, exactly what we wanted. And if we go back to port and go back to our dashboard, again, you give it a minute or so that this application will show as sync and healthy. And there you go. Our application is already synced. There is no apps that are out of sync. Everything looks great. You can just expand this to make the view look a little bit better. And yeah, we can see our app syncs, rollback deployment history, all the actions in the past. So that is great. Everything working again within the port UI. I'm quite impressed. To do this in Backstage, oh, forget it. It's super difficult. You have to code quite a bit, honestly. Like, it's a huge improvement over my workflows that I have in Backstage. So once again, I can't thank the port team enough for doing this and making this much, much easier. Okay, so now the next step is to show you how we've created this, how we've integrated all this, and walk you step by step into building the integration between port and ArgoCD and show you how to build this dashboard, how to make all this easy. We're now going to build the integration between port and ArgoCD. And this is pretty easy. You just click on the new button here and a new data source. And you can see there are multiple data sources that you can integrate with. ArgoCD is right here. And notice this little icon here, powered by Ocean. So if you click that, Ocean is really an open source extensibility framework for port, and it's meant to make it easy to connect port to other infrastructure and third-party tools. That was developed here by port. So you can go ahead and read through the Ocean documentation. It's not the topic of this video, but just know that they can integrate here through the use of Ocean. And as you'll see, when we click here on ArgoCD, and then you'll have multiple installation methods. There are 3 of them. There's scheduled GitHub workflow, which is a run that will trigger once and through GitHub workflow. But this is useful for scheduling ingestion of data. And then the second one, which is what we're going to do, it's using Kubernetes. You can see real time and always on. Using this installation option means that the integration will be able to update port in real time using webhooks. And then Docker, this is really for development purposes and testing. So we're going to go ahead and click real time and always on, which will give us Helm commands here. So we're going to run a Helm chart in our Kubernetes cluster to get this to work. We've seen this in the very first video when we integrated with PagerDuty. One thing I want to mention here, though, is that the team at Port, they're working on this Ocean SaaS offering that is going to make things easier to deploy into your environment. However, still using the Helm chart has its benefits because from a security point of view, this is all hosted in your own environment with your own keys and so on. So we're not relying on this Ocean SaaS. Now, that's it. We grabbed this command here and we can go ahead and deploy that. However, we need to make a little bit of a change. Here, I'm not showing my port client ID and client secret because I don't want you to see these. So you're probably going to use yours. You'll also need to add your ArgoCD token. Okay, so if I go back into my Visual Studio Code here and I look at my README file, we're actually following 3 guides here that you can take a look at. But for the Helm command that you see here, there is something I wanted to add here, which is the scheduled resync interval. I think it's not showing properly here, so let's fix that. So what this does, it allows Port to sync with ArgoCD every 1 minute. So this one is not shown in the installation guide, so have that there. And as well, as I said, you need to add your port client ID, client secret, your ArgoCD token for Port to talk to Argo, and your ArgoCD server URL. Okay. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to run these commands with my own data. I won't show you that and show you how the integration works. Okay. So I've run that. If you run Helm ls, you'll see that I have my ArgoCD Helm chart here running. And if I run kubectl get all, you'll see that the ArgoCD deployment is now up and running. If we're interested in looking at the logs, we can run kubectl get logs or kubectl logs. And this will show us how we're actually integrating here. I should show you the ArgoCD dashboard here. Our awesome service is running. It's running 1.14.1 when we reverted back. Now inside of Port, you'll see that we have in the catalog, we've got an ArgoCD dashboard. We've got Kubernetes resources, ArgoCD deployments, running services, ArgoCD projects, namespaces, clusters, and so on. So all that got populated for us directly from the integration. You can see that the pages here are getting really crowded, and it's probably a good idea to start organizing these in folders. So we can create a new folder here and call it ArgoCD, for example. Save that. And we can bring our folder to the top and start moving our dashboards or our pages right into this folder like that. And now we can just collapse ArgoCD and we can bring it back. We can do the same thing for PagerDuty and so on. So that way we have a better way of viewing and organizing our pages. If we look at the builder side, you can see that we've got a bunch of blueprints with their dependencies and the relations map and everything else. So that is all done for us directly through the integration, which is great. If we go to data sources, you can see our ArgoCD data source right here. And this mapping got filled for us as well, which is great. And we can do a few more things, of course. One thing to do is to tie our service that we have here. So if we go to catalog services, our awesome service here, we want to be able to tie that into ArgoCD's running service because it's a repo right now, but it's also running in ArgoCD. So we want to make sure that we have this entity related. And port gives us a number of ways to connect these two entities together. We can do that through the UI, through GitOps API, through a webhook. So the way we're going to connect the two is we're going to go to our builder, and under running services, right here, or running service, let's expand that. We're going to create a new relation at the bottom here. We'll give it a name, service. We'll call this the workloads service. Attach this to our service blueprint. One entity, create. Now we want to map our workloads to their services. So we can do this by going to our data sources page under ArgoCD. Go to the bottom, and I'm going to paste this connection here. So you can see our kind application, and here the mappings identifier metadata labels port service with the blueprint service, in this case the blueprint ArgoCD application with the metadata labels port service. So we can save and resync that. Okay, now we can go over back to our services. Look for awesome service. And in just a minute or two, this should populate. And there we have it. You can see that we've tied our running service in ArgoCD directly with the service that's in our repo. And of course, there's the Kubernetes resource, ArgoCD deployment history, and so on, because these are already related from the data model within our blueprints. And the way these are tied together, if you see here under the ArgoCD application Nginx, notice the labels here under port service equals awesome service. So that's how we're tagging or tying the service running in ArgoCD with our service that is in our GitHub repo. Let's start adding a little bit to our ArgoCD dashboard, because we're going to give this to our developers. So we see unhealthy applications, application by sync status. We can add a table. And in this table, we can call this awesome service workloads out of sync. So I want to be specific to this particular service that is out of sync. Give it the ArgoCD icon, and we can leave the description for now. The blueprint is going to be our running service. And from here, we can leave this as is for now, but then what we're going to do is filter, add a new filter, and look for sync status. Right now, you only have synced because it hasn't seen an out of sync yet. So we can easily just trigger an out of sync, and therefore we can add this status as out of sync. Let's trigger a quick out of sync status by going to our deployment and maybe change the replicas to 2. Let's commit that, replicas 2, and push that over. And let's go to our ArgoCD and refresh just to get us out of the sync here. And then we wait a little bit of time, a minute exactly, and this should give us a status of out of sync. I'll show you why I'm doing that in just a minute. Here we go. So we're out of sync. And here in the filters, I want to add a new filter, call it or specify the sync status has any of, and then out of sync. Now I have out of sync as a valid option. Then we can add another filter and service as any of awesome service. And then we can save this view. And now whenever we have the awesome service out of sync, this will populate. So that's perfect. We can, of course, go back to ArgoCD, sync that. That's synced. If we go back here and wait a minute, this will go away, and this will also go away. There we go. Perfect. Let's now add our self-service action that allows us to sync ArgoCD directly from port, as we saw in the beginning of this video. So what we're going to do, or what we're going to need, is a workflow action in GitHub Actions. And then also we're going to add a self-service action inside of port. So go to self-service, new action, go to edit JSON, and I'm again pasting from the instructions from the guide our self-service day 2 operation right here. So let's save that. And when it comes to the GitHub Actions, we can go to our repo. And if you go under code and then GitHub workflows, you'll see that we have a sync Argo CD app.yaml that already has our GitHub action. I'm not going to spend time here. We'll see this in action in just a minute. One thing to note though is under settings and secrets and variables actions, you're going to need your Argo CD application host, your Argo CD token, my GitHub token, a port client ID, and port client secret. You're going to need to add those for the workflow to work. So let's go back here and take a look at our self-service action, which is sync the application. So we're going to add this to our dashboard, ArgoCD dashboard. You can click add action card, and we can select our sync application action card here, save that. So now that's available to us. And now let's add another self-service action, which is the rollback, deployment rollback that I showed again in the beginning of this video. For this one, we have our action here that I'm going to paste. So let's go to self-service, new action, and paste this one here. Now notice that I just noticed this now, GitHub org and GitHub repo name. So for me, under the port folder here, you can go under rollback deployment. You see I've already updated my repo, my org name and my repo. So I need to actually copy this and put this into here and save that. And go back and update my sync application because now this is wrong. This has the generic GitHub org and GitHub repo. So let me go back and grab that from here. Once again, mine will be different than yours. So you make sure you update yours. Let's save that. And going back to our catalog at ArgoCD dashboard, we can now add to our self-service action widget here another one for the rollback deployment. All right, and save that. And now we have both actions available to us here. And finally, to finish off our dashboard, we want to add some history. So action history, we're going to add our sync history and get our sync application. And then one more. And let's put this at the bottom here. And add one last one. Another action history. This one will be our rollback deployment history. And we can give it an icon here. This one. Deployment. And that should do it. We've built the dashboard that I had in the very beginning of this video so that once again you can deliver this dashboard to your application team, your dev team, and they can see everything related to ArgoCD in one place. They have a few self-service actions that they can run from here without having to access or look at ArgoCD at all. So their workflow would be port for their visibility into their applications, the status of their applications, and of course, their IDE right here where they're running their applications, and they have a deployment.yaml where ArgoCD is monitoring, so they can change the replicas from here if they want. But more often than not, you might want to use the rollback deployment right here to make changes, change your image, a tag, and so on. And from here, you can trigger a merge request or a PR, and then have your peer review, and then push that through, and then you can sync the application again from port. So again, your view would be port, your IDE, and maybe GitHub as well. And that's all. You don't have to worry about any infrastructure views that developer doesn't really need to know. In this video, we saw how to create an ArgoCD dashboard in port to control our interactions with ArgoCD straight from within port. As a platform engineer, you can tailor this dashboard to the needs of your application developer teams to reduce context switching and improve their productivity. I've really enjoyed working with Port, and the potential is incredible for integrating with our favorite DevOps tools to create an enjoyable experience for our developers and to make our lives easier as platform engineers. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this 3-part series as much as I have. I will see you in the next video.